2024, what a year. Let's look at some of the charts to tell you the story about where we are and where we've come from. Interest rates were cut. So finally, after the cost of living crisis, they came down from 5.25%. Two big cuts there, so half percentage point cuts. And the expectation is they're going to continue to go down in the next year. But here's what's interesting, OK? Before the budget, they were going to come down quite a bit, OK? So you're talking about getting down to 3.5%, actually below 3.5% in the coming years. Now look at how those forecasts or projections changed after the budget. So the budget changed a lot, OK? So it changed the amount the government wanted to borrow. That had a bearing on how much the Bank of England was likely to cut interest rates. But also, it changed the amount that the government is planning to raise in taxes in the coming year. This is showing you the tax burdens. So basically how much tax we're paying across the economy. So all kinds of taxes as a percentage of GDP. Back before this budget, the previous government, it was going up. It certainly was going up to a really high level. In the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, they suggested they would raise taxes a little bit more than the Conservatives were going to. But look at what actually happened, OK? So that was the manifesto pledge. Now look at what actually happened. A much bigger increase in taxes than was signalled in that manifesto. Now, Labour say that's partly because of the black hole in the public finances they discovered. But either way, it is the highest tax burden that we've had on record, the highest on record, and it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves in the coming year or two. Back to that election, though, I mean, if you're looking at this in data form, there's two really striking things about this. First of all, this was a massive landslide, so more than 400 seats won by Labour, biggest since the kind of Blair, the glory days of Tony Blair. But here's the thing, if we take those bars and we're just looking at all the election results going back around about a century, and we look not at the total number of seats that were won, but at the share of the vote by each of these parties, have a look at this, OK? Actually, look at that red bar there. That is the lowest share of the vote, so a lot of seats won, but lowest share of the vote that we've seen for any majority government going back all of this period. So that's quite striking just in terms of the disparity of those two charts. Another thing that's worth just focusing on, because it was an issue at the election, it's an issue after the election as well, is net migration. So a year ago, we thought that, or rather the Office for National Statistics thought that net migration had peaked at just over kind of 750,000. So that's 750,000 more people coming into the country than leaving. Since then, those numbers have been revised, actually once and then twice, with a massive change, a massive upward revision. Now, the estimate is that it's just nearly 1 million, so 906,000 in the year to June. So net migration, a massive issue. Of course, there's been so much focus on, what is it that's driving this? A lot of stuff in the headlines about small boats, those boat crossings coming into the channel. But actually, if you look at it as a percentage of what we're talking about here, small boats is really quite small, much smaller than other asylum routes, smaller than other family routes, smaller than study and work. And it's study and work that are the main explanation for higher migration. Final topic to talk about here, because it's something we've been focusing on quite a lot at Sky, is the reality of the sanctions regime. We have found that sanctioned items, these are the kinds of things that you can be used to make weapons, that were going into Russia. Obviously, sanctions came in when the war began. That went to basically zero. They're still actually going into Russian neighbour countries, OK? So in the Caucasus and Central Asia. And those kinds of things we know are finding their way across the border. And what kind of things are we talking about? It's drone parts. Look at this. This is the kind of the change in the kinds of items we're talking about. It's drone parts, it's telephone switching equipment, it's radar devices as well. All of these things going from UK companies towards the Caucasus, towards Central Asia, and we know they're ending up in Russia as well.